3 poofs, a blanket, which can only mean one thing. It's cold.
It's cold outside. It is a little chilly, but we are spared in the shed, so we're trying to stay in the shed as long as possible. So, last week, we ended with this guy Noah in a boat with his family floating safely on the surface. And not just his family. 2 of every kind of animal were sent to him by God to take on this boat, plus 7 of every...
7 of every clean animal and unclean animal.
Right,
for sacrifice,
right.
for eating, for
Sure.
the animals eating
Sure.
as well.
So everything was provided for. So tonight we're going to find out what happens after the flood. So, the flood recedes, and it starts again with 2 of my favorite words in the entire Bible. But God. What do you think, Chris?
That's amazing. I mean, it's one of just many of God's glorious buts.
God's glorious buts. So God remembered Noah and all the wild animals. He sent a wind to blow across the land and begin to dry up the waters. That would not have happened without God. He sent that wind, and the waters began to recede. The underground waters stopped flowing, and the torrential rains from the sky were stopped. So, after this, the flood waters gradually receded from the earth, and it took 150 days. 150 days.
How many?
The flood began.
That is crazy. Just 5 months of constant rain.
Yeah.
Have you ever been outside and it's been like raining the entire time? And it's just like, when will this rain ever end?
Right. And it's so small compared.
I just can't imagine 5 months.
I can't either. Because I don't like the mud after 10 minutes, much less 5 months. So,
What mud?
What mud? What mud? There's nothing but rock. So, exactly 5 months from the time the flood began, and then waters continued to go down, but mountain peaks became visible. Okay? So keep track with this. There were 5 months. 2.5 months later, we're at 7.5 months. And then it was another 40 days before Noah opened the window he'd made in the boat.
So, a month and a half.
Another month and a half to release a raven. So we're at 9 months?
9 months.
9 months.
Yeah.
And he released a raven. Now, the cool thing about the raven is, and our pastor just talked about the raven at church, too. I don't know.
I wasn't there.
Okay. Well, pastor talked about everything that you and I discussed.
Yeah.
About the raven, about how it is a very solitary animal. It can fly for long distances. Remember we talked about that a little bit?
You did tell me about that. It can and it feeds off of the flesh of dead animals as well. So
right.
it had sources out there. It could stay out there for a long time.
Right. So the bird flew back and forth until the flood waters on the earth dried up. He also released a dove.
A dove.
And the dove, that was well done. On dry ground. But he couldn't, so he flies back to Noah. And that's the nice thing too about a dove. They do fly back and return. So he comes back to Noah. Noah waits another, let me look.
I think it was
Another 7 days.
7 days, yep.
He waits another 7 days. So we're at 9 months and some change. And he released the dove again. This time it returned
With an olive leaf.
with an olive leaf in its beak. That's pretty awesome.
So that let him know that it had. So this is how he could see far down below. So he's like, I have no clue if
Right.
if it's gone or not.
Sure.
And so he sends out the raven. He sends out the dove, and eventually the dove comes back with the olive leaf, and it lets him know, hey, it's at least gotten to the point where you can start to see the tops of bushes.
Sure. And then, so that comes back, and then another 7 days, Noah waits, and he releases the dove again, and this time, it didn't come back, and he knew it was safe. You have any good stuff to... Oh, by the way, Noah was now 601 years old, and now he's 601.
It's a whole year.
Talk about the arthritis and aching in the joints. A year of rain.
A year of rain and rocking and rolling. And what's interesting is the text says that it was over the earth, and I was reminded of a passage in the New Testament when it talks about things going over the entire earth, or the message going over the entire earth. And there was one explanation. It said it was over the known world. It was an explanation going over the known world.
Right.
And I'm thinking, maybe it wasn't a global flood. Maybe it was a flood over a specific area, like where only the humans were.
That is possible, but I've also seen and heard that some research has shown that there is evidence of a flood all over
I've
the
heard that
entire
one
world.
too. I've heard that one too. It happened after the Ice Age, didn't
Right.
it?
Right.
Or something
So-
like that.
And that's where all the confusion starts about how long was a year, or how long was a year? How long was a day when God created the earth? Like, how long did it really take? Well, in my heart,
It took as long as it needed to.
it took as long as it needed to.
It's just
exactly.
splitting.
Well
It's just
put,
splitting
Chris.
hairs. That's all it really is.
That's exactly right.
And whether or not you believe it was a day or a year or 1,000 years doesn't really matter. Apart from the message.
Right. That's exactly right, Chris. That's awesome. Now, we're coming to my favorite part of the story of Noah. As Noah lifted back the covering of the boat and saw that the surface of the ground was drying. Okay, 9 months from the time
I think.
the flood started to the doves
Yes, I
being
think
released.
instead of being released, and then it became a year or something like that.
Well, 2 months after he saw that the surface was drying.
So almost a year.
So we're looking at about a year.
Yeah, about a year.
Before the earth was dry again. So
I never thought you'd be in math class today, did you?
I know I'm making you add and subtract and stuff, but all for the purpose of multiplying the word. So then God said to Noah, all of this, folks, would be for nothing if Noah was too afraid to leave the boat. I mean, can you imagine? You've been on a boat for a year, floating around on this water that's coming from the sky and coming from the ground and coming out of everywhere. It's covered every surface of the world. And then God says, leave the boat. Well, I don't know what's out there. But you know, I think that what he would say to us today is, you may be in a circumstance where you need to get out of that boat and leave that your opportunities are. See what your chances are. Rely on God, just like Noah did. But you gotta leave the boat first. Some of us are too comfortable where we're sitting. I can guarantee I'm not too comfortable sitting on this couch right now because it's a little chilly out here. But when I'm in my house, I'm good and comfortable. I don't want to leave. So ask yourself today, folks, am I too comfortable where I am? Is God asking me to leave my boat? So everybody, all the people, and all the large and pair by pair.
And then what's the first thing that Noah did?
He built an altar.
And he prayed.
And he worshipped.
And he worshipped, that too. I'm pretty sure it's the same thing.
Yeah. And I love that. It's such a resounding theme in the Old Testament. When people have an encounter with God, they always stop. They build an altar. They worship. Because you wouldn't build an altar without the worship part, right? And
Right.
you wouldn't worship without dedicating it to God.
Right, exactly.
Alright.
Then Noah, no, it was God next. So God gives his blessing to this family to repopulate the earth, and he basically carried on the blessing from Adam over to now Noah. And not only did he carry that blessing on, now we're seeing more and more what that blessing is, almost like he was adding on to it.
Now talk again about what blessing means.
Blessing, as far as I've been able to determine, is where God imbues power on people and things to do and be what they are intended to be.
God, I love that. Every time you say that, thrills my soul. To be and do everything that they were called to do and be. Man. So then God made a promise.
He made that promise, and this is that blessing that he was carrying on. It was to he was going to bless Noah, and he was going to bless the earth. And no matter what's more, he gave a promise to the earth.
That's right.
He gave a promise to the earth. See here, that I will not destroy it again with a flood.
Yeah.
And he gave a sign of that promise with the rainbow.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So his sons and he were both blessed, and they were told, like you said, exactly what Adam was told: to be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth, and he blessed all the animals. And he said, there were a lot of different,
like horses you don't eat,
right?
That sort of thing. Things that would necessarily probably give you a disease or something.
Yeah, it even said you must never eat any meat that still has the lifeblood in it. And I'm just going to go ahead and confess right now, I eat my steak medium rare. So there's,
That's okay.
That's okay. It'll be all right. I just don't want anybody out there thinking, oh, I eat my rare steak, what am I going to do? It's okay. It's all covered by grace. All covered by grace. Mentions again that God made humans in his own, and then says again, twice here, be fruitful and multiply.
He does it twice?
Yeah, he says it up here in the beginning. He says, be fruitful and multiply. And then down here, let's see, that was in verse 1 of chapter 9.
Be fruitful and multiply, bring forth abundantly in the earth and multiply it.
Yep.
He does say that twice.
Yeah, it does. Verse 1 and verse 7. That means it's important. Anytime something is repeated like this in the Bible, it just resounds with importance. So the more times a thing is repeated, like if it says flesh of my flesh, it's important.
Or Lord of Lords.
Lord of Lords.
King of Kings.
Yeah. So anytime God, especially if God's repeating himself, that means sit up and listen, kids.
And there was an explanation that I learned once. That when he repeats himself, he's saying one thing and then he's affirming that thing, sort of like establishing it as complete truth.
That's awesome. All right. So as Chris said, he made a promise that never again will floodwaters kill all living creatures. Never again will a flood destroy the earth. Never again. And I know that there are times that we wonder about that when it rains and rains and rains. But I'm telling you, God promised he's faithful. Don't give up on your hope, because God never fails. And what was the sign again, Chris?
It was the sign of the rainbow. And you know what?
What?
I sent you that picture the other day. When
Yes.
it stopped raining.
Yes.
I saw a huge, beautiful rainbow. I'm gonna have to share it with you guys on Spirit in the Shed. It was beautiful, but it's gonna destroy the world again or something like that.
That's funny. When I send clouds over the earth, the rainbow will appear in the clouds, and I will remember my covenant with you and with all living creatures. Never again, here's that repetition, will floodwaters destroy the earth.
It's amazing. And so after this, we get a weird scene where Noah builds a vineyard, he gets a little drunk on wine, and gets a little naked under the covers.
Right.
Or maybe not even under the covers. Here, where it says that his children, or at least one of his child, it was Ham, who went into the tent. He saw what happened, and he went back to his brothers. Now, what it says here is he
did a bad thing.
He did a bad thing, and the description of that is what I once heard was that the bad thing that happened wasn't anything that happened in the tent, but the fact that he went back to his brothers and said, "Hey, Dad's getting a little drunk in there. He got a little bit naked."
Yeah. And so the thing was the gossip about it more than the...
Right.
Interesting. So, then he wakes up. The other two brothers, Shem and Japheth, went in backwards.
They didn't want to see the nakedness of their father.
Yeah.
So they went in backwards and covered up. And that's an interesting thing. They could have just been like, "Dude, seriously, don't be telling us that," and then just walked away.
Right.
But they literally went in and they were like,
They did something about it.
They did something about it.
And it was for the protection of their father, really. Because the respect I think I'd show some respect to that man, don't you?
Yeah, I would.
So, when Noah woke up from his stupor, he learned what Ham had done, and then he cursed Canaan, the son of Ham. You have anything to say about that?
I actually do, and it doesn't ever mention that Canaan or God approved of the curse on Canaan.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know whether or not he approved of it or not. But what is interesting is that it's talking about how before Israel was Israel.
Okay.
So like the inhabitants of Israel before Israel came into there, and then they displaced them. But that honestly, I don't really see any merit in that. All I see is Abraham not Abraham.
Noah.
I'm all mixed up with all my terms now.
Yeah, all the guys, all the Bible people are jumping into our brains.
Yeah, Noah, it just got a little mad right here,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all I really see here.
Yeah, I think you're Japheth and hopes for the best, which that does sound like a mad parent. Like you walk off and you're like, I can't believe that kid did that. I just don't know how he's gonna make it in the world. And then, but this kid over here, not bad. So after that incident, Noah lived another 350 years.
So he was 951 years old.
When he died.
Almost a whole millennia.
Oh, work. So then we get into your favorite part, which is the lineage.
And what we talked about the lineage before, if you go back to our previous videos, whenever it talks about a lineage, it always ends on the most important thing, what we're going to be focusing on next. But before we get to that, it actually talks about the lineage of the three sons, and the three sons make up different parts of the world. I think Ham made up the whole area of what is now Africa. The descendants and Shem made up Middle East, and then kind of mixed into Asia a little bit.
And how did you learn that? Did you study it like separately, or do you just know geography that well?
There was a little bit of that, but there's also just like standing on the shoulders of other giants. I mean, the majority of learning the Bible is just hearing about what other people say about it,
Right.
and then learning things for yourself
Right.
as well.
Good. I just wanted you to share that, because I'm not good at seeking some things out, but that's where Chris and I work together on this. Where I don't add, he does. Or he doesn't, I do. So that's how we came about this whole thing.
Yeah, and so it goes into that lineage, and then you get it pauses for a moment to focus on one man named Nimrod, and it talks about him as being a fearsome hunter, and I think it pauses on him for a second because we're about to talk about him,
right?
And then it pauses on Abram,
and
that's where it finishes the lineage. So we're gonna get into the next episode. You're gonna figure out who Nimrod is. You're getting kind of a hint that he's a powerful hunter and kind of a evil person.
A rough dude.
A rough, tough dude. And then we're gonna figure out who this Abram character is.
Right.
But yeah, you have anything else you want to add?
I don't. Just keep warm out there.
And also, please remember to like, comment, and share.
Right.
The feedback we got on that last episode.
That was phenomenal.
268 people watched the
so
last
thank
episode.
you. Thank you very
so
much for watching
we really
our videos.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And bundle up.
Please bundle up. It's cold out there.